a lot of people, it's the same with Facebook content. They'll do all this amazing Facebook content and I might get nothing out of it. I'm like, BS, because they may have heard about you, and then they Googled you, your Facebook page shows up. They go look at it. It's phenomenal. They go look at a neighboring gym's Facebook page and it's blah, or all they show is people sweating, laying on the ground. And that's not interesting to them. They're coming through because of the excellence you're portraying in your field.
You're an inspiration to our entire organization.
Welcome to the Gym Marketing Made Simple podcast. We're going to be talking the done-for-you marketing and sales strategies proven to work with boutique fitness gyms to increase quality lead flow and grow your revenue. Don't try to be a professional marketer and waste tons of money. Let the experts at Lasso do it for you. And now, here are your hosts, Blake Ruff and Sherman Merricks.
All right, guys, another episode of Gym Marketing Made Simple. As promised, we told you guys we were going to get Scott back on, and we have. So this is episode 2, follow-up episode, whatever you want to call it. Scott, first of all, thanks again for hanging out with us.
Hey, thank you. It's a blast to hang out with you guys. You make me laugh every time we hang out.
So yeah,
I like laughing.
Yeah, so do I, man. I love it. So guys, today we're going to talk about podcasting on the podcast. But seriously, we're going to talk about how gym owners can basically dominate their community with using a podcast, right? Because I believe there are a lot of gym owners out there that are doing a podcast for their community, but I think that it could be done better, sort of missing the mark. Because let's be honest, guys, so many people want to hear about fitness and all that stuff all the time. So we're going to talk about different ways to just have your entire community engaged every time that you drop an episode, right? And I'm excited about that today. So Scott's going to be our expert, and we're going to go from there. So first of all, let's start it off. Scott, I think one of the big questions that we get from people in general that want to start a podcast, how expensive is it to start a podcast? Because I think that's a common question. I'm pretty sure you get it, but like how expensive is it to start a podcast?
I mean, you could do it for free. It probably won't sound amazing. It probably won't look amazing, but you can do it for free. And a lot of people do. It just depends on your perception of how you want to be, seen, or how you want to be presented in the community. I personally think you should do it right the first time. But there is always a growing curve. But these days you can grab an incredible microphone that, you have to talk in here that won't pick up all the ambient noises and everything outside of you for $100 on Amazon. There's Samsung, there's Audio Technica. They're both $100, dude. And you can now even do USB-C into your computer. If you're just doing one person, if you're doing interviews local, it's a totally different game. But if you're just doing one person, you can get really great sound for $100. And then camera, you're going to get your quality. I got over 2K into my camera, and then you could use a webcam that's free on your computer. So that kind of goes all over the place. Then there's all the production side. So it just depends on how much you want to produce, how much time you have. Are you willing to pay someone to do it? Are you going to do it yourself? Again, don't forget that time is money. So you're not really going to be doing it for free.
Well,
but
no,
yeah,
I think, okay, so at a bare minimum, so for you guys that are out there just thinking, I want to start it, you can get started for free or for a very minimal price. So for you guys, man, just get started. And then the more you do it, when you get the consistency with it, then you can start investing in microphones and cameras once you really do it. Because I think, for me, Scott, I had started a podcast a while ago. It is called Matrimony and Money. It was the Matrimony and Money podcast. And I found some success with it. But the thing that stopped me from doing it wasn't the talking points. I love talking about marriage and money, but it was all the extra stuff. I was having to do all the stuff on the back end, and I would do it. And then I think I did it for 30 or 40 episodes. And I was just like, it just sort of fell off. I was like, eventually I'm going to get back to it. But now, having you guys in my life, I'm pretty sure I'm going to start it back, because now I can just record and then that's it. And then it's out there forever. Yeah. It just makes it so much easier.
Right. Well, I want you to mostly gym owners or people in the fitness industry listening to this, right? So think of it as the member that comes in and says, I need to be prepared, or I need to work out before I start working out with you. And you're like, wait, time out. Like, you guys have gym members that come into the gym and or people who are coming in to look at the gym, and you just want them to get started because you know that the progress will come. Just start getting your reps in. Just start coming in and learning how to do it. They don't need to buy the perfect shoes. They don't need to buy the perfect shorts. They don't need to buy the perfect anything. Just get started. And sometimes just getting started is a very important thing. But again, if you got $100, like, throw down for one of those mics I told you about, and your sound is going to be 10x what it was normally. But yeah, man, I got to give you kudos, Sherman. 30 to 40 episodes is way beyond where most podcasts go. 13 is the number when most of them die.
Oh, okay.
So
look at that.
That's pretty big.
Look at that, man.
Yeah.
But don't fire me up. I'll start it back up just to do 80. But it's just so much stuff on the back end. Again, like anyone that knows that do podcasts, it's not that it's necessarily difficult to do all this stuff, but having businesses and families is just another thing more than just the talking, right? I just want to jump on, have a good time, talk about what I want to talk about, and then I want to be done with it. And when I was having to do all that other stuff, it eventually died out. But I'm definitely re-energized to start talking about money and marriage again.
I want to kind of step up. The podcasting's become so, mainstream now. It really hasn't. It's still really in its infancy, but it's come more mainstream that the equipment has come down, because if you're going to do two people in the same room, now you've got voices going between microphones, and you can create very weird sounds, very weird effects. And so when you do that, like, I'm going to tell you right now, you probably need at least $500 in equipment, because you got to have some sort of processor and you need a mic that only takes in the sound from right in front of you, like ours all do. I'm telling you guys, got to eat your mic, and headphones. And that even if you watch Rogan, of course, they're wearing headphones most of the time. That's because you just can't get rid of that weird thing that happens. So there is more investment if you're doing an in-person one, but there's so much power to an in-person one. I would say it's totally worth it.
Yeah, man, I would. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the gym owners specifically in the community, how they could be doing their podcast, starting a podcast to really have an impact in the community long term that I personally believe would last past the gym ownership years, right? So Scott, like, what have you seen? Because I know we were talking about this last time towards the end of the podcast, or maybe it was offline, but like, let's talk about how they could just sort of get into the community and go from there.
Yeah, the community angle is so much more leveraged. There's one of the guys you sent me to talk to about podcasting said, I have a gym, but I need to brand myself as well. And so this is a really important thing, is you as entrepreneurs, you may move into another area. And if you can brand yourself in the meantime, you're not only like building up your business that you have now, you're positioning yourself for future business, which I think is an incredibly important point. And so by kind of putting yourself out in the community as the person who is going to be the authority or the connector, you're allowing other businesses to talk about their business. And there's so many ways that we can go about that. I have a lot of ideas, because you can hop on a online version like this and have a conversation with someone in your community. But what we talked about a little bit before was the fact that if you're interviewing people in your community, and you don't even have to talk about your business, maybe you just kind of bring it up nonchalantly here and there, and you're like, hey, we're going to talk about business. I have my own business. You have your business. People are going to find out. They're going to know. But more importantly, that person you're interviewing knows. Yeah. And more importantly, that person you're interviewing feels important, and they know that you're important. They're important to you. And so then you can start. Then they start. You're top of mind. So someone in there maybe working for them is like, I really need to get in shape. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to say, oh, well, you got to go talk to Blake. Blake's awesome. He interviewed me on his podcast. He's a super cool dude. You have added value to their lives. They're going to, automatically have that reciprocity rule where they're going to add value back to yours. Yep. And so if you can extend that over and over and over and over again, can you imagine? And then you can do things very creative, like you can start doing like promotions through the other businesses and by promoting theirs as well. But you've created that relationship. I know everybody's tried this, that maybe they hang banners for other businesses in their gym, or they have a business board on the wall. Well, this is bringing it even higher level because you're getting in front of them in a very value-driven manner.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. Because, I just think in general, like it's cool to have your member Sally on, and she talks about her journey. She'll share it with some of her friends, but it sort of ends there, right? Like, of course, some people are going to listen to it and say, okay, Sally sounds like me, so maybe they end up. But then when we're talking about really impacting the community with members and outside of members, I think that what you're talking about goes a long way, because now we are genuinely trying to help these other entrepreneurs or people get out in front of other folks, and we're just using our gym platform to get there. I think that's something I see from guys and girls that are really doing the podcast well. Like, they'll have people on that they won't necessarily quote unquote benefit from, but they genuinely are trying to help them. They're plugging their products, and then just down the road, something comes of it, and they continue to do that time and time again. And then they have this uber successful podcast, and they're like, I don't even know how it really happened. I was just really trying to help other folks, and then it ended up helping me.
Well, you guys connected me with Robert, right?
Correct.
And Robert did this with blogging. I think we might have talked about this, or maybe I talked with him. He did blogs on local businesses and put them on his website, and they reached out to him and thanked him. Like, that's like a micro version of this. And I was telling him, like, hey, if you do podcasts, you're spending time with them ahead of time. So now your blog isn't being seen just because of SEO. Your blog is being seen because that gym owner is telling people about it. And the key here is that you're highlighting them in such a way that is so obvious, right? Let me take it another step. I know somebody who bought movable, or like a smaller podcast unit with mics on movable stands, like you guys might have just sitting on your desk, right? And they can reach up right before you. And he goes to the business itself. He asks the owner, when can I come when there's not going to be a lot of noise? Because we're going to shoot video, and I'm in the mix of it. I can see, hey, this maybe it's a restaurant, the environment, you're showing the environment. And now you're going to that person, and you're even elevating how much you're giving, and you're in their element. They feel great. They're talking about what they're able to have, like this pride. You're filming it. Now, let me tell you, this is a lot more expensive. There's a lot of gear involved. It's more time consuming, but there's so many angles you can take to really drive really great success. So Robert was telling me, writing blogs suggesting local community businesses really boosted his SEO. Well, if you do if you connect local businesses and interview business owners and local leaders, the same SEO can happen, because what I would have you do, my suggestion is, if you own a gym, have a page on your website devoted to your podcast, but also have the transcription on there, because all those words turn into SEO for you. You're going to talk about the community. You're going to talk about a business. So anytime somebody's looking up that business, they're going to be driven to your website. That will be like the second, third hit on there. You guys know this stuff more than me. But it's just all driving people to your resource. And like, hey, look, these guys own a gym. They have this awesome podcast. I'm going to listen to it. And then you just continually hit the minds of those people. And so that SEO becomes incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And if you guys didn't listen to the last episode, go back and listen to that. So basically, to recap real quick, is for gym owners, you're not going to do a podcast about like anaerobic, glycolytic, and metabolic pathways, or your study of the reasons why you do what you do when it comes to methodology. Well, the best way to do, because you're a local audience isn't going to listen to that as much, but inviting local business owners to talk about what's going on in your city, in your community, things like that, to get the word out, to connect. That is the route that we're talking about to have a bigger impact locally and to get people to tune in about what's going on in small businesses or what's going on in the area to give tips, the best new restaurant that opened or a place that you just tried out. That would be a great way to get more members to meet the people that you want in your gym. So I think one question for you, Scott, is like, if you're a gym owner sitting back listening to this, like, hey, what are some of the first steps to, like, because I mean, to be honest, like before we started doing this, and like I know Sherman has before, it's like sometimes you just don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
So like what, I never even heard of like this Riverside platform. Like, what are some of the basic, like, let's go bare necessity to like, hey, if you wanted to ramp it up, like what are kind of the steps for people?
So you have to decide if you're doing audio only or you're going to capture video. And some people actually put it on YouTube. I haven't decided.
What do you recommend?
I recommend at least audio, obviously. So I drop mine on audio. I used to do YouTube, and I had some consistent people listening through YouTube, but it wasn't enough for the amount of work. The YouTube adds so much work to it. And so you want something that you can record on. There's programs like Riverside that record video and audio and do transcription. There's even Zoom. Zoom will do that by itself, right? So even when I do a solo episode, I just do it on Riverside because it uploads the files and it's already in there for my team. It makes it super simple. But a place to record it. And some people just have a mic going into a unit and they record it. They buy a $200 unit and it has a little SD card in it and it records it, and then they upload it to their computer and they drop it. And then there's free tools. There's free tools out there that you can just search free podcast editing, and you can plug your microphone in, log into that website, create an account, and hit go, record, and it's recording it in that area on that platform for you. And then it'll have very basic editing tools also built in. And so that's one. You got to have some sort of way to capture your sound. Obviously, a microphone. We talked about that. Again, there's a Samson and there's an Audio-Technica. You want to get I think it's called Cardioid. The sound is really weird, but you want one that only captures the noise in front of you. Some people just use Bluetooth AirPods or whatever, and that's fine too. And then you have to have a podcast distribution site. So this is someone who will distribute your podcast out. If you want to be on Apple, we just talked about this. You've got to apply to be on Apple. You actually have to have an episode uploaded to apply to Apple. And so record just a short one of talking about what your podcast is going to be about. Upload it on that podcast distribution site. Red Circle is one. You guys use Spotify podcasting. It's free. And it's obviously the second highest SEO in podcasting out there next to Apple. So now you guys are for sure on Spotify and Apple. And then it starts to distribute to all the other tools or all the other channels too. So if you set it up, it'll kind of automatically start to distribute out in all these different areas. So podcast distro site where you can, you'll have to create some Canva art of your podcast, what you want your podcast cover to look like. It needs to be very easy to read. This is thumbnail size, guys. Super easy to read. Clear over catchy. Everything should be clear. What is your podcast about rather than catchy? Does that make sense? Yeah. Like when people are trying to come up with a name, they're like, bubblegum unicorns. What the hell is bubblegum unicorns about? Yeah. Like nobody knows. Yeah. And so, maybe, and if it's your business name, like, are people really searching for your business name? That's something I'd have to ask you. So you're always thinking of search engine optimization in everything that you do, and clear always works over better than catchy. And so, there's some barriers to starting, some learning things. And then of course, if you want to make clips and reels, which are incredibly powerful for getting your message out, there's some AI tools out there. Let me tell you right now, everybody will know you're using AI tools, and they don't quite look as flashy or as attractive as a human editing. And so, but if that's what you're restricted to, use it. But because clips are incredibly powerful, and tools like Riverside that we're using here, they have a free version. We pay, obviously, because we do more volume than that, but they even have a way to create clips as you're recording. And so there's just tools. You just kind of have to go down the wormhole. I actually have a course that I used to sell. I used to sell for $3,000. And now if somebody's wanting to start with me, I'm like, here's the course. You can have it. Get going. And, you know, because it talks about promotion. It talks about podcast art. It talks about that trailer and posting with Apple. So for your listeners, like, I'm happy to give that thing out because I just want people to step into it and do it.
Yeah, that'll be great. I think that's a huge value add for folks that are really serious, because here's the thing. I think that folks that are really serious, I think like your course could help. We'll try to get that in the episode notes, in the show notes. But a bigger thing is, you know, like you're helping them, man. I'm going to tell you, like Scott said, I did 30 or 40 episodes. And had I known about Scott back then, I would have been like, I really enjoy doing this, but I have to get this off my plate. And I just would have easily transfer it. Okay, you do it. I love it. I just want to record it. And that's one of the things when we started this pod, because I was telling Blake, hey, like, I don't want to do this for 3 or 4 or 5 months because I've done this in the past for myself and it's going to be very cumbersome. So we were like, all right, we're going to spend money from the beginning. And now I will say that it is well worth it, because I can see us doing this forever now, because it's simply lining up guests, talking, having a great time, and the rest is just approving stuff from your amazing team. So I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To be fair, I honestly, I had no idea how much, because I think to your point, you know, for a gym owner, it would be great to have video too, because then you can use, it's for us, it's another source of organic that we don't have to think about, right? It's already content. It's just adding really quick content to it. So I think that, you know, I had no idea how much went into it on the back end. So like I could easily see where somebody starts and stops. And for us, you know, if one person listens to this and loves our content and what we say, it's well worth it, right? And I'm sure more will than that. But I think that's a big thing. And one thing you said too is like, you know, not trying to be overly cute, just be clear with what you pick in your podcast, right? Like make it simple, make it align with it, you know, make it align with what you want to do and what people are going to listen to. And your audience. Man, know who your audience is, right?
Don always says that. Donna Miller always says that. Be clear, not cute. Like he said, like every time I hear someone saying that, I'm just like, yeah. Donna Miller repeats that 10,000 times. Like, be clear, not cute. You don't need a catchy saying. You don't need a. Be clear. Be clear.
Yeah. And you know, there's so many people will build out these really nice podcast studios. You know, mine. I have this printed background, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I've been doing podcasts for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Like this is not new to me. And it was not until I got a new place that I'm like, hey, I need something on the back wall that makes it look interesting.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that stuff. Just get started.
Yeah.
You know, and the biggest things I've seen with gym owners doing podcasts wrong is trying to do it in their gym when classes are going. It's almost impossible to reduce the noise, the clang and clatter and the music. And so that is kind of like, you either have to have very high-end equipment, foam around you to absorb that, or try and do it during off times. So I don't want to dissuade you from doing it, but that's something that we have noticed. It's very common. And then the ROI, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the ROI. Like, I'm not against you tracking it, but you got to give it time. So let's say you podcast for 6 months and you get nothing out of it, or at least you don't think you do. I'm going to suggest you probably are. You're getting people buying in at a higher level. You're getting your voice out there, but hey, like your voice might be out there. They may have listened to your podcast, but then they go on Facebook and click that link for, you know, and fill out the form. Well, you're going to track that as a form, like the Facebook lead. You just don't know where the genesis of the conversion came from until you know, maybe ask, and they might not even identify it. There's a lot of subconscious stuff that 100%. Goes on. But as soon as you do know somebody came in through that resource, like, oh, I was listening to your podcast and I checked out your page, and then calculate that. Mark it down. What's your average life value of that person? Boom. Okay. Compared to how much you're spending on this. Now, if they refer anybody to you or anybody else comes in by way of them, that's also ROI on your podcast. So you have to be very honest about really what is happening. A lot of people, this is the same with Facebook content. They'll do all this amazing Facebook content and I might get nothing out of it. I'm like, BS, because they may have heard about you and then they Googled you, your Facebook page shows up. They go look at it. It's phenomenal. They go look at a neighboring gym's Facebook page and it's blah, or all they show is people sweating, laying on the ground. And that's not interesting to them. They're coming through because of the excellence you're portraying in your field. And so it's very hard to pinpoint that. You know, you guys do ads. We know that if someone clicks and fills out that form or enters a funnel that is attributed to that ad, there's a lot of other things that might have led them to see you in the first place. And so be careful about saying, well, I'm not getting my ROI. And also, golly, play the long game. Like, how do you know that if you don't get out there and you build your own personal brand, in 10 years, you become a coach to businesses in town and it's $10,000 a head and you've got 5 people a month. I mean, how you could be making $50K. I mean, seriously, business coaches can make that much. You could be making $50K a month just because you developed your own personal brand. So do not undervaluate what the big picture that is happening by getting your voice in front of people.
Yeah. And like for you guys listening, think of the last thing that you bought, like probably bigger purchase or even smaller purchase, right? At some point, you probably saw an ad for it, but did you click on the ad and buy it? You probably waited a week or two. Like, for example, I always use this for my clients we talked to in Last to Know. I went and bought a cold plunge ice barrel, right? Like, I compared like the $5,000 cold plunge to the 1,000. I'm like, dude, this is 3 minutes of my day. Like, I'm not going to spend $5K on it, right? But I researched, I probably saw 18 ads of Brooke Wells and whoever else in the ice barrel, but I never bought it off the ad, right?
Right.
I never did. So it's not going to get attributed to the ad. So what you guys really need to reverse engineer in your head, and this is what we tell, it's not always black and white. You want it to be, and we get it, but like, it's not that way. It's just not the way life works. And this happens with your gym. People are going to see an ad, old members all the time, right? Old members or even new members, right? And it plants the seed in their mind. And then say you're on a busy street, they drive by it, they say, oh, we just got done doing a podcast with one of our owners. There's Friendship Fitness or Sherman's Gym, Dynasty, right? Mm-hmm. Then they're going to go on Google and they're like, Dynasty CrossFit, Friendship Fitness, apply to come in. And they're going to say, oh, what brought you in? They're going to go to the last step, Google, right?
I found you on Google.
But if they really thought about it, it was the ad that first draw their attention to actually seeing your facility or searching it later on. So the biggest thing you guys have to think about is like you want it to be granular, but it's not. Like you have to think bigger picture. And like, you know, if you get one person, like we just got off with Jeff and he's like, I had these 2 clients that came in, they brought their husbands, then they brought their kids, and then their kids brought 5 kids. So from those 2 people, I ended up with 10, right? It's great. And honestly, as an advertiser, I tell people very clearly, I saw your ad because I want them to know, but I'm not an everyday person, right? Like, cause I know just how marketing works. So everybody listen to this. Like, so I think a great question for you, Scott, is if you were to just track ROI, how long and frequency do you need to be doing it before you can say like, hey, this is working or this is not working?
I wouldn't do anything less than a year, personally.
Yeah.
So like that reminds me of a story of like I heard Hermosi, say, and he once put out flyers and it was like 1,000 flyers, right? And his business mentor was like, he's like, it didn't work, man. I got a call and it ended up a dude. He scratched his door or something and broke his windshield in Mercedes and he hung up. But his business mentor is like, well, how many did you put out? He's like 1,000. He's like, you got to put out 10,000 to even get a true test. Right? Like you got to do 10 times the effort. So, so you're saying it's like 1,000 and what kind of frequency do you think?
No, he said a year.
A year. Sorry. I said 1,000. A year.
Yeah. I would say at least one every other week would be the minimum because you have to have a regular pace. This is another thing that everybody considering this should understand is that once you create a pace, people expect it. So if you skip, they think you've died because if you go search podcasts right now, and then you find a bunch of podcasts, go look at the last episode release. Almost everyone you hit, every podcast, unless it's a big podcast, the last episode release was a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. And so you've got to do the reps, a very like Brotherhood of Fatherhood, my podcast. I done that for years. And in the last year, I've gotten coaching clients from it. I don't have a coaching offer. I don't have a mentorship offer for men, but it developed a long-term relationship with people where they heard me talk. They heard the consistency of the message. They heard my story. They related with it. They reached out and said, I want to give you money to talk to me every week. I mean, just think of that, right? I had no intentions in the long run of that being the outcome, but it has become the outcome, and it's been a very successful outcome, and it gives me a ton of joy. So not only will your ROI absolutely be in the gym, it can be outside of what you ever thought, and life changes. Maybe 3 years down the line, Susie from the healthy sandwich shop that's just crushing it calls you and says, I really, really enjoyed our time. I really appreciate your approach on business. You are very professional. You're giving to the community. I'm selling my business, and I wanted to give you first right of refusal. And like, you're in a point now where you've been running a business and you're like, man, I could have another, like, this is a turnkey business. Everything's in place. Manager's in place. She's wanting 30K. I can make 30K in the first 6 months because she just wants out of it. Guys, this happens all the time. We're not going to go and post our business for sale or the opportunities we have because we're going to reach out to the people that we think can do that first. I always do that. Before I throw out something, I'm going to reach out personally to people. So the opportunity options are well beyond what you're even thinking about.
Yeah, I like that. No, I like that. Yeah. So really, what I'm getting from this is that, you know, like when we start this, like when you start a podcast for it, because I believe that's one of the biggest misunderstandings, or I don't know if it's a misunderstanding. People are just flat out ignorance. People don't know that, like, when you start these podcasts, you need to have a sort of minimum date or episode number that you're going to hit, right? So you just you sort of reverse engineer that thing, say, hey, I'm going to do this for at least 18 months. If I do it every 2 weeks, that's X amount of episodes. I'm locked in. I'm going to do it, and then make a decision from there. But I think just in the culture that we live in, everyone's like, all right, I'm going to do it. Hey, 2 months. Hey, man, nothing has come from this. This is a waste of my time.
Right.
And then they stop when probably right on the other side of that, someone's going to listen to it. Because I think that's one of the big things with the podcast that I was doing. Like, I remember when one week I missed the episode when I was still doing it, and people were actually reaching out. And I was like, I didn't even know people were really listening to it, like waiting on it like that. So,
well, I probably mentioned this in the previous recording we did, but you have to imagine, even if you have 100 listeners regularly, you get 100 regular downloads. What that says is that 100 people are willing, they are volunteering to give you a platform for however, maybe it's 40 minutes.
yeah.
They're literally taking 40 minutes of their lives and putting you on the platform. That's like filling a room with 100 people who are just there to listen to you for 40 minutes. Yeah. That's authority, you guys. Yeah. And so then people are like, well, I'm not getting 1,000 downloads. I'm like, well, how many are you getting? 50. Do you know what kind of people they are? Well, they reach out to me and tell me, I'm like, are they clients or future clients? Well, yeah, I can see about 10 or 15 of them being future clients. Okay, well, let's measure out what the cost of that is. Like, that's a great impact. Yeah. You know, it's just like throwing out ads. There's so much unaccounted for data and decision points going on out there. And like you said, Blake, the way that they come in to your ecosystem may not be what they actually first got exposure from. And so though, give it a committed time. I say a year. Give it a committed time. Understand the budget you're going to incur at the beginning, and then just go with it. Go with it. I hate these automations on the screen. I don't know if you guys are seeing. I got bubbles flying up, and just don't expect people to come and say, "I'm signing up because of your podcast." Just don't, or "I'm signing up because of your ads." Yeah. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Have a much bigger focus than that, and understand that everything is kind of intertwined and interconnected, and you got to lay out little breadcrumbs back to your business everywhere you go, and breadcrumbs of excellence. Maybe they're grain-free breadcrumbs. They're protein balls.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I think that, you know, for you guys listening, we're gonna try to get Scott's course in the show notes. So you guys are going to be able to get in contact with him if you need help. Because listen, he's here to help you. I remember when we first reached out to him, we were reaching out, and he was like, "Hey, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just going to answer your questions. And I'm going to talk about this and that." I was like, "Hey, I appreciate that. Being a salesman myself, like I get it, right? Like everyone, like you don't have to quote unquote sell every single person that you talk to, right? Like we do."
No.
Like we do tons of sales calls. Some people sign up, some don't. But for me and for people that sell, they understand not everyone's going to sign up, right? And that's okay. No. Eventually, people come around when the time is right. So if you have questions, reach out to Scott. Like he will help you. And if you can work together, great. But if you can't work together right now, like that's fine. When the time is right, we believe that he's one of the best in the business. That's why we're using him. So I think that you guys that are really on the fence or looking to take your podcast to the next level, he would be a great resource for you guys. So again, Scott,
appreciate you guys.
Thanks for taking time to chat with us. We appreciate it. And as usual, guys, tell a friend to tune in, and we will see you guys next week. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Gym Marketing Made Simple podcast with Blake Ruff and Sherman Merricks. We hope you enjoyed. We believe marketing should increase revenue and not waste money. So book your free call today. Head on over to lassoframework.com. That's LASSOFRAMEWORK.com and find the right words, get more customers, and increase your revenue. We'll see you here next time.